Today's video is sponsored by Heart of the Tribe Gallery, where art meets community. More about that later. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is something I've been wanting to put off, but I can't. I'm with the Reverend David McGeoch, who is leaving our fine town after 16 years of dedicated service and has brought a lot of changes to the town, including the church we sit in. So I thought I'll come down and have a little chat with him. We're going to come back down and record his final service, and we're going to put all that out as a tribute to the man who's done so much for this town.
Thank you, Gabriel, for inviting me to do this. It's great.
Thank you for coming along and talking to us. It took a bit of arranging, but you're a busy man, aren't you?
Sadly, yeah.
They say it's like getting an interview with the Pope.
Oh, no, please.
Not quite. It's not quite that bad. So, 16 years.
I know, it's a long time, isn't it? Yeah.
What's happened in those years?
A lot has happened. For a start off, we're all 16 years older, and I know that's obvious, but actually I keep looking out at different groups and different people and thinking, gosh, you know, you had fair hair before when I first arrived, including me.
Now you've got none.
Yeah, or in my case, I've got a bit white.
Because there's kiddies you would have christened in here that are 16-year-olds.
Listen, I worked out that the year 11s, when they left St Dunstan's, that every single person in all three schools were born during the time I've been here. That's a very scary thought. And when you think that St John's and St Ben's have around 250 children, and then there are about 400 children at St Dunstan's, that's an awful lot of children. And that's when you start to think, actually, gosh, you know, all these people have grown with me over 16 years. And we've seen a lot of changes, we've seen a lot of growth. So the churches, I mean, very kindly, you came, I think, 2 years ago now, when we went round this lovely church and talked about the reordering of it and how much is being used. It's great. And St Benedict's Church has completely changed, internally, of course, since I got here. So I arrived in 2008, and perhaps that's a really good starting point. I arrived with a very clear vision from God, rather than from the town, of I'm here to put the church back on the map. You know, over the road we have the ruins of the Abbey. We all know that for many centuries Christianity has been very important to Glastonbury itself and the surrounding villages. And I leave feeling that not just me, but with lots of other people, that's exactly what's happened. So I do feel a sense of my work is done. It's now time for somebody else to take Glastonbury on to the next phase of its life, really.
I think it's fair to say you have done that. I mean, we were talking earlier on, and when I interviewed Kieran recently, we were talking about the importance of the church as the hub of the community. And the reordering, as you call it, in here, which we looked at, and I will link to the video below. Do go and have a look, ladies and gentlemen, because the changes in here have been fabulous. Give you so much more scope and flexibility to enable the church to fulfil that role.
Absolutely.
I mean, we were saying later on, you could take all of these chairs out and have a market in here. You could have a group, you could have a large circle. I mean, there's so much you can do. And don't forget, these churches never had pews.
No,
pews are a later invention. They were built without pews, so we're actually going back to how they would have been. And I think one of the legacies that I can see, I mean, I'm not a churchgoer, ladies and gentlemen, but I can see the way this church is centred in the middle of the community, and the community uses this church. And I think, from my point of view, that is one of your legacies that you're leaving. And I mean, when you came here, there was pews, it was a stuffy old church, and you're leaving it much better than you found it.
Thank you. I'd like to think so. And certainly, you know, this church is used most days now for all sorts of different things. So on a Monday, you know, we have a talking cafe where we have all sorts of different groups come in from all walks of life. We have about 14 different stations around the church. I sound as though I know all about it. Actually, I have nothing to do with it at all, and that's the great thing. It's very much the community coming here to use it for all sorts of things concerning housing, IT, getting some toast, whatever it may be. It's multifunctional. On another occasion, we'll have a concert here, and yes, it can be a choral concert, but equally we've had all sorts of other concerts.
You have lunchtime concerts?
Yeah, we have lunchtime concerts every week, and again, they're very, very different from one week to another, and people volunteer to play and sing and read here as much as people turn up to listen to them. They're all varied. And that's the lovely thing. And we have one or two concerts that seem to be controversial to some. So we have the Medieval Babes, for example, that now come twice a year. Well, they're internationally known.
I love the Medieval Babes, they're great.
They're fantastic. And everybody just settles in. The church is heaving. And then, of course, we have, although I did inherit this, but I built it up, we have the Christmas Tree Festival during Advent. And the Christmas Tree Festival, for those that haven't seen it, it's about 50 trees in church, and from every aspect of the community. So from schools that you would expect to retailers down the road, a huge cross-section of society. And we come together 2 weeks before Christmas and we switch the lights on, and we always get somebody different locally to come and switch the lights on. And then people come from far and wide to come and see them. So, it's all those kind of different things.
And the smell of Christmas trees.
It's lovely, isn't it? Yeah, it is. It's gorgeous, yeah.
It's one of my favourite smells, Christmas trees. It takes me straight back to my youth.
Yeah.
I did a channel with a guy called Jeff in America, and there's this particular plant, I forgot the name, but it grows in the desert. And when it's been dry for a long time and then it rains, the scent coming off this thing is
it's gorgeous. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how smells take us back to happy times.
Bread butter pudding takes you back to my mum's kitchen every single time. Every single time.
Bread butter pudding might take me back to my mother, but for all the wrong reasons. She wasn't a good cook.
Mine was a really good one. I was blessed in that way.
No, I wasn't.
So, getting back to the changes in here, you've done very similar changes in St Benedict. I mean, that's doing a lot of work in the community down there. Probably more so than this.
I would agree.
In what they're doing down there. I mean, they're feeding homeless, they're working with underprivileged. It's brilliant what they're doing, and to a certain extent, they're stepping up and doing some of the things that should be done, I guess, by the state. And the church is fulfilling that role. Now, you've got a third church, haven't you?
I have. It's Mary's in Mere,
Beautiful church.
Village
now, that's
church.
Contemporary with the Abbey, isn't it?
That's right, set out. I mean, if you look at old maps, you can see exactly why. That water would have gone all the way, and where the church is, it's just very slightly on higher ground.
And, of course, the fish house was there, and they were big on fish.
Yeah, exactly.
What would they eat on Friday without fish?
Well, now, you say that. It was more than that, and I've only learnt this in the last 2 weeks, because I'm also, by definition of being the vicar, I've been a trustee of the Abbey for all the time I've been here, and some archaeology has recently been done around the abbot's kitchen, and surprise, surprise, you'd think you might find a lot of meat bones. No, it's filled with fish bones, and it showed that the early abbot and monks actually ate more fish than they did meat, because around here with all the water, of course, fish was in great, exactly. So yes, although we joke, I think it was more than a Friday. And going back to sort of, the things around this church, the thing that has followed me from day one is the Holy Thorn. Yes. That for me is what I will remember most of all, good and bad. So I take us back to when I arrived. I arrived in September 2008, and I had this funny thing called, there's a tradition of cutting of the Holy Thorn sent to the Queen.
Yes.
And it's the eldest child of St John's Church, St John's School, because of course it's next door to the church, the mayor, which of course changes every year too, and the vicar, who doesn't change every year, about every 16 years as we've said. And it was a very small event. And I felt actually this is really a community event, because we are sending something to Her Majesty. And I had gleaned that several years before that a group had gone to the Queen personally to take the Thorn to Buckingham Palace, and she'd said that she put it on a dining room table. So it becomes very intimate. So anyway, long story short, the following year I broadened it out. So we now have the 3 schools of the town, St Dunstan's, St Ben's and St John's, including sometimes Millfield. It depends whether they've broken up or not. We then have the Chamber of Commerce. We have all the civics from the town. So obviously we have the mayor, the deputy mayor. They all dress up, etc. We have the town crier.
Your local YouTuber.
Exactly.
Links below, ladies and gentlemen. You can watch these. We film them.
And we also have always somebody from Radio Somerset and either BBC or ITV. So it has a huge interest. Well, it all went well 2009. Then 2010, up in Wirral Hill, it all went terribly wrong. And that's really when I felt that I had broken into the community of this lovely town. So very, very, very quickly, when I heard that it had happened, I was actually at St John's School at the time, 9 o'clock this particular morning, and I just felt I needed to be up on the hill. I didn't know why I was going up on the hill. It's just a tree, And I went up, and it was as though somebody was trying to cut the heart out of the town. I realised two things. One was the grief, but secondly, how poignant this Holy Thorn really was. So I just stood for as long as was necessary. And then somebody turned to me and said, you're the vicar, aren't you, of the town? Yes, yes. We need you. Can you bless the stump and can you bless the town? Of course. So we, in very Glastonbury fashion, we all gathered together. We all held hands and we literally formed a huge circle around this stump. And I said a prayer and then we separated while I then blessed the town. I then stood there for nearly 2 hours and it was a bit like something out of Monty Python, only it was serious. People were just coming up, hugging me, telling me their story of why they were there. So perhaps they'd been hand fasting for a wedding. Perhaps they'd just been there because they'd met their girlfriend or their boyfriend for the first time. There'd been blind dates up there. They'd scattered their loved ones around. I mean, the stories were huge. My shirt was sopping wet when I finished from tears of people. And that's when I realised that actually it was the church and it was Christianity that people, that's what people felt about being the vicar. What I didn't realise was this story is going all over the world. And just before Christmas, I could well have done without it. I was doing radio interviews in Australia, Canada, with all the time changes and everything else. But that's kind of therefore been with me all the time, the Holy Thorn. And it's the Holy Thorn that people think about away from the festival and away from Abbey. So coming back to this church, we felt that Joseph Arimathea is centre point to this town for pilgrimage and the Holy Thorn. So just behind you, we've renamed the chapel when we reordered to call it Joseph Arimathea Chapel, and we rededicated it because there is a lovely stained glass window of Joseph behind the altar, and it gives us a sort of a purpose to people. I mean, in some ways, I think this church should have been renamed of Joseph Arimathea rather than St John, but that's a contentious issue.
We won't mention that.
No.
But I mean, it does show, and I think that's something that many commentators have spoken about. Glastonbury has a heart. It's a community heart.
It does, yeah.
And, you know, every time something happens, people come together and they do things without being told or without any credit for it. They just do it. And I think that's what the church has tied into. And I think that sense of community is important. And it's brilliant that the church is part of that. I've got to ask, if you was to say, this is what I point at when I look at my last 16 years. What is the thing that you would say you look back on with the fondest memory or the most amount of pride that you were part of?
Okay. It might be a surprise to you. I think the biggest thing I've ever been part of here that's never happened before and probably won't for a long time is a conference that we held in this church just over All Souls, All Saints, so the beginning of November, Death and Dying weekend. It was incredible. So from the pillars we had literally, because it's all about light, and so we had lights coming across from all the pillars here to make a kind of archway of light. We had all sorts of boards around the church where people would come in during the weekend and place pictures of their loved ones who had died. We had the High Sheriff of the time to come and open it. We had so it started on the Friday, and the Saturday evening, Charlotte Church came to sing with an orchestra. So we had a well-known conductor, and between us, we knew that Charlotte had lost, I think it was her father, and we wrote to her on the off chance. I always believe in this place, if you don't ask, you don't get. And she'd actually, I'm looking for a way back because she'd cut off from everything because she'd had 2 children. And she gave her time free. So she sang in this church on the Saturday night. That was one amazing event. And we had thousands of people. We did workshops and all sorts. So we linked in with undertakers, with lawyers, to talk about the process of when somebody has died, because most people don't understand what all that is about. We got very good local coverage both through the Diocese of Bath and Wells and also on local radio and TV. And for many, many months after, people were talking about the effect it had had on them very positively. And we culminated on the Sunday night with a service in here, as we do every year, where we call out the names of those that we have been part of funerals for 2 years. We still do that bit. But for me, that was the most amazing thing. It lifted what can often be very sad to a very positive and enjoyable event. I'm not saying death is enjoyable, don't get me wrong. Of course it affects people, and I'll stop on that, but you asked me the question. That's one of the things. I think another occasion is I had a sabbatical for 3 months, which means that you can go off. If you've done more than 10 years, they think you're a bit tired, so they say have a little bit of a rest. So you go off for 3 months. And the night before I went off for 3 months, which was also, again, November time, we had Tibetan monks in here. We only had 4 of them, and as I'm saying now, I can feel the hairs at the back of my neck come. The sounds, Gabriel, that they produced were absolutely incredible.
It's multi-tonal, isn't it?
Oh, it was amazing. And of course, we reordered the church, so they could come and do this. It was just lovely. That sound just, and I quietly, in the second half, I left and thought, this is a great way to start my sabbatical. So that's another. And then on a very sort of smaller note that's not big is when there have been several, when we've had really big names of the community, and we've had either a service, we've either had a funeral and or a memorial service.
Beach.
That's the one.
So we filmed that, ladies and gentlemen, that's on the channel as well.
So you know that when Dave Beach's funeral was here, it was an incredible event, and again it sums up a legacy.
I'm getting the hair standing up now. Because
we had all walks of life. You know, from the rich to the poor, from the homeless to the massive housing estates, you know, from mayor to whatever. And then Dave used to come in, and he came in every day, and he'd put his hand on his heart, and if I was here, he'd then do that, and then he'd do that. So we applauded him, and we all looked at the Joseph Arimathea Chapel. Do you remember this? And I got everybody to do exactly the same. And even today, when some people come into church and they go, well, that's exactly what they do. Now, that's nothing to do with me. No. That is just a legacy of a very profound community person. And I think that, for me, is always the legacy, is that this place, in particular St. John's for the big, is where people look. The legacy for St. Ben's, as you said, is the amazing outreach work that they do.
Fabulous.
And fabulous. I can't take credit for any of that. I really can't. That we have some wonderful volunteers, some wonderful people who even thought that this should happen in the first place. It's sad that it has to happen, but it's a reality that there is a great need there. And the legacy I leave, though, over that is that I came here with St. Ben's feeling very strongly that they were always on the shirt tails of St. John's.
Yes.
And after 16 years, they are part of this, what we call a benefice, which is the 3 churches under one vicar. But actually they are very different, and they should be. And if you think of St. Benedict is all about hospitality. So I've worked hard on trying to encourage people from St. Ben's to think along those lines. Of course, the spiritual, the services are important, but actually at St. Ben's, that's secondary. We haven't lost that, and actually the services on a Sunday are very different to here. So this is very much the big civic church. It's the big building, so let's think big. With St. Ben's, it's the small, intimate church, so let's think about the pastoral and being the body of Christ in a very different way.
I think you've missed one of your crowning achievements, and that is the reordering, because what you've just been talking about probably couldn't have happened without the churches being reordered like they are, so that they can facilitate those things. Yeah. I think that's, what you've done in this, I love it. This is a beautiful place to come, and as kind of a historian and an archaeologist, I like the idea of churches without pews, because pews are a modern invention, largely Victorian, and the Victorians destroyed more churches than the Germans did. They really did. But I think what's been done in here is fabulous. So you're going to leave us on the 18th is your last service.
That's right,
And we are going to be filming that, ladies and gentlemen. So if you can't make it, it will be going up and you'll be able to see David's last service in full. You're going elsewhere. Tell us where you're going and what you look to do there.
I'm moving 165 miles away, I only know that because I've done it a few times now, to a market town called Leighton Buzzard, which is between Luton and Milton Keynes. It's in a different diocese. It's in St Albans diocese.
Good for gliding.
Is that right? I didn't know.
On the hill there. They glide on the hills up there.
I don't think I'll try that. I can barely walk straight, let alone go in a plane.
Yeah.
But Leighton Buzzard is similar in terms of its looks, in the sense that it's a market town and that's how it's built up. I have only one church, but we'll keep that a bit quiet because most clergy would only like one.
Give you another one.
Let's hope not, they might. It's got a spire, so you can see it all the way around the town, as opposed to a tower here. I've never had a spire before, so that's going to be interesting.
It is the second tallest in Somerset.
It is, and I'm very proud of the fact it's the second.
And we've got birds living
We
up
have
there.
indeed.
Yes.
So I don't know much about the spire of the church, but my remit there is to take the church into the town. Well, it's kind of mirrors what I've spent 16 years doing here.
Have you got pews? Have you got to do the reordering again?
Possibly. Yeah,
We're not saying anything.
they have got pews, but yeah, for how long, who knows? But the service, there's two services there. So in a sense, I've got St Ben's and St John's all in one. So I've got St John's at, I think it's 9:30 on a Sunday, and then I've got St Ben's at 11. There are 60 families that come to the 11 o'clock service. That was a huge pull. The school is just next door, rather like St John's is here. So there's a lot of similarities. But then on a personal note, you and I both have talked a lot about our love of canals.
Oh, yes.
So,
You've
thank
got
you,
the Grand
God.
Union
Thank
right
you,
on your
God.
doorstep.
Yes. 5 minutes walk away.
Absolutely.
So,
Double locks all the way to Birmingham.
Exactly.
Ooh.
Yes, exactly.
Time to get a bike.
That was a bit of a pull, I tell you.
Oh, I can believe it. Do you do ministry to the boat people from that church?
No, but I'm hoping that will come. Yeah, I don't need any excuse.
Yes, no.
I mean, I think my first sermon will be, so put your hand up if you own a boat, and I will log it.
Yeah, well, I know you,
Exactly.
your friends.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Because as you know, I like it. I love canals, and then equally, public transport. Oh, it's so different, sadly, to here. You know, I'm 10 minutes walk away from a train. It takes half an hour to get to London. I'm a Brummie by heart, and it takes an hour on the same route to get into Birmingham, you know?
Yeah.
So that's I love London. I don't ever want to live there, but I love visiting London.
Good for days, I go there.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. It's great. So, you know, I joked with my wife the other day and said, you know, if we think that tonight we want a Chinese takeaway, we don't need to do that. Just get on a train. And half an hour's time, we're actually in the centre of Chinatown itself, having a meal and still being home within kind of 2 hours. Isn't that a lovely thing? So on a personal note,
I'd imagine your buses, because I go on a lot about the buses around here. The buses here, I mean, they've taken the word public out of public transport, and the cancellations, and then they subsume routes into other routes, and then you lose the 77 to Yeovil.
I know.
There's going to be about 6 services a day to Yeovil, and you can't come back after 5 o'clock.
I know.
That's a main north-south sunset route. And
Which just very quickly then, if you've got a hospital appointment at 4 o'clock at Yeovil, how on earth do you get home?
You don't.
You know?
You can't.
No.
You can't. You can't. And Taunton's just as bad if you go to Taunton.
I know.
It's just as bad. But anyway, that's another aside. But, So what would I mean, you're going to have words at your service.
Yeah.
What would your words be to your parishioners for the last 16 years? We're going to kind of close it down now. What would you like to say to everybody as a few final thoughts?
Firstly, thank you for the invitation. I've had a ball. As the saying goes, we've had a blast. We've had our ups, we've had our downs, but we are now reconnected to, I think, every part of the community, and be proud of who you are.
Absolutely. David, it's been an absolute pleasure talking
Bless
to you.
Thank you.
I hope you, ladies and gentlemen, if you get a chance to come to the service, or if you live locally, come and say goodbye to David. I'm sure he'd like to see you before he goes, because it's been a wrench. So you were saying earlier on, it's exciting, it's new, but it's 16 years of your life.
It is, yeah.
So be nice and gentle to the nice man, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you very much for talking to us, and I look forward to seeing you at your service.
Bless you. Thank you.
The Heart of the Tribe Gallery is a community art gallery situated near the top of Glastonbury High Street. They host amazing exhibitions supporting local artists, and they have a beautiful secret garden out the back. So be sure to check them out and support local art.